Hello and welcome to The Point. Thousands turned out today in Varanasi to march with Narendra Modi as he filed his nomination papers. But was that a display of support or just curiosity? And after the punch he's introduced in the last few days, is Priyanka Gandhi Congress's best hope against a seemingly unstoppable Mr. Modi? That's the big debate tonight. But first, a critical question raised by the principal of St. Xavier's College, Bombay, and his controversial advice to his students. Where does education stop and politics begin? And behind the disguise of advice, has he knowingly breached that line? Now joining me to discuss the trade-off between education and politics is one of India's best-known professors of sociology, Dipankar Gupta, the former Attorney General and former Solicitor General Sodhi Sorabji, the Joint Chairman of the Congress Media Committee Randeep Singh Surjewala, and BJP National Spokesperson Siddharth Nath Singh. Dipankar Gupta, let's start with whether a college principal should advise adult students on who to vote for before we come to the actual content of Father Fraser's letter. Where do you stand on that key issue?
Well, I think no university intellectual should publicly broadcast his or her political preference. That is not their job. Their job is to lay things on the table, give out the facts, criticize both sides, in fact criticize around the clock, and be the kind of agent that rocks the boat. But to be a partisan is something that actually undermines a professor's institutional status. So the professor then becomes an ideologue.
So you're also saying that by revealing in that letter how he thinks people should vote, or by suggesting how they should vote, Professor Fraser has undermined his own credibility.
His institutional status. As a professor of in a university setup, you're not supposed to do these things. An ideologue can do it, but not a professor. Imagine, it's not just whether students will vote for him or not. Imagine the burden he'll carry the rest of his life. He'll always be known as a Congress partisan, and that's like a life sentence.
Randeep Singh Surjewala, your party has publicly and formally supported Father Fraser, but how do you respond to Dipankar Gupta's point that public intellectuals end up undermining their credibility if they reveal in public, directly or indirectly, who they support in terms of politicians and in terms of political parties?
Let me begin by saying I think your light's gone, so you'll only get my audio. Dr. Fraser, when he spoke about corporate capital and communal polarization as a heady mix against the basic tenets of secular democracy, said something that is the obvious. Let me tell you, Mr. Thapar, when we go to a college, what is education? Is it only the letter and the word, or is it something more? When we speak about education, it is also a perspective that our teachers give on various issues that affect life. That is what education is in a larger sense.
Can I ask you a question?
That is what Dr. Fraser did. And
can I ask you a question? Well. Do you believe that it is the job of professors to actually guide people in terms of how they should vote? These are adult students. They are old enough to vote legally. Surely, therefore, they have a right to choose for themselves, not be directed, pushed, or in some way encouraged in a particular direction.
But Mr. Thapar, the very fundamentals of a good educational process and a good guru-shishya relationship is to give you an insight of all that affects the world and the atmospherics around you, because it is the young who choose a government. And he only said choose well. He did not say vote for an ex-political party.
Well, yes.
When Dr. Fraser pointed out various models of development, when Dr. Fraser points out about communal polarization and corporate profit on one hand, and indices of basic human development on the other, he's only asking them to make appropriate choices.
Well, just a moment.
And it is for students completely to choose. You can
I'll come to the specific contents of that letter later. Let me stick first of all to the principle, whether a principal should actually be advising adult students on how to vote. You've heard Randeep Surjewala suggest that the guru-shishya relationship requires that the guru gives a perspective, gives guidance. As a professor, how strongly do you disagree with that view?
Well, I disagree with the guru-shishya view altogether. Because in my view, the Shishya should always aspire to be better than the Guru. And the Guru-Shishya relationship is one of asymmetry that continues forever. The second point is that when a professor says something like this, those who side he takes, they might slick the hair back and say wonderful, and those who is against may let down the hair and be very angry with him. But the fact of the matter is this cuts both ways. Suppose this man had said dreadful things about the Congress, then where would the Congress party stand today?
Well, presumably the position of the two parties would be exactly the opposite of what it is today. Let me bring you in there, Sori Sarabji. You're a former student of St. Xavier's. Now, in this specific instance, Father Fraser used the college website to communicate his views. That website is not just official property, but it belongs to a state-funded institution as well. In your eyes, does that make Father Fraser's alleged breach even worse? Or is that just a matter of detail?
Karan, that's a matter of detail. The real substance is that he has no business to make a statement which has clear political overtones. I mean, it's essential that a college like St. Xavier's should remain apolitical and should be perceived to be apolitical and not dabbling in politics. And certain statements clearly give that effect. I ask you one question. Suppose put a principal of a college in West Bengal tells students not to vote for people who are atheists or who believe religion is the opium of the people. Can he say that? A priest may tell his parishioners that. But a principal, a teacher, cannot tell these students about this matter in this way.
All right. Siddharthnath Singh, your party, the BJP, has publicly criticized Father Fraser for the letter that he's written and for the advice that he's given his students. Let me put to you Father Fraser's defense. He says, as a teacher of developmental studies, it is my responsibility to show the students the clear picture. After reading and understanding these considerations, the students will be better able to make their own choice. Why is that not an acceptable defense?
Well, that defense would be acceptable provided he had done so. He didn't open, if you ask for any public debate or the students to debate and make an opinion, the principal is supposed to direct them, giving all the viewpoints and asking them, now you have a debate and formulate your own viewpoint. I will not thrust upon you what is my viewpoint. And if you read the concluding para, it just gives the very straight what he is thinking, and it is definitely a politically loaded email. But at the same time, what we have questioned is not his individual right to have a political opinion. Everybody should have. But at the same time, it's an impropriety, which is legally also, it's wrong, because under Universities Act, whether it is Maharashtra or Central Universities Act, no principal or teacher can express through the institution their political opinion, and that goes for other institutions once the election code of conduct is on.
That's a fair point. Let me stop you there, Siddharthnath Singh, because I think this is a perfect moment to actually go into the details of that letter and to ask whether those details prove that Father Fraser has crossed the line that should demarcate between education on the one hand and politics on the other. Let me quote to you, Dipankar Gupta, a sentence from that letter. He says, all the Human Development Index indicators and the cultural polarization of the population show that Gujarat has had a terrible experience in the last 10 years. Now, as an academic, in your eyes, is that an objective analytical comment or a disguised or perhaps even a clear attack on Narendra Modi's track record? Which is it?
No, if he had just said that much and stopped at a different time and different place, I think it would have been perfectly all right.
But in this time,
in this time and this place, it's not on, because he's also said the same letter that the programs of the Congress party are very good. In fact,
he hasn't named the Congress party, but he suggested.
But he suggested something where it's quite clear. And those who worked with the government, the NAC, for example, did a wonderful job. Now, it's quite clear, therefore, that he is tilting on the side of the Congress and against the BJP. The problem is this, that having made his preferences so clear, how will he ever carry credibility with the students when he stands up and lectures? They all say that, is he saying this because he's a congressman, or is he saying it because he's an intellectual?
Sorry, Sarabji, I want to now quote from the very last paragraph of that letter, because once again, I want to ask you whether this quotation I'm about to read out suggests that the Father Fraser has crossed that critical line between education and politics. This is what he ends his letter by saying: the prospect of an alliance of corporate capital and communal forces coming to power constitutes a real threat to the future of our secular democracy. And then he says, support for people who pledge to work to take human development indicators higher and who commit themselves to a pluralistic culture in diverse India, that is the hope for the future. Many believe that those two sentences are in fact doing nothing more than saying, don't vote for Modi, vote for Rahul Gandhi. Do you think that once again the thin disguise is so transparent, Father Fraser's political colors are clear and obvious?
In substance, it is a political statement. It's very clear. I mean, we may not mention anyone, but it's a very subtle, indirect way of saying not to vote for a particular party who believes is a result of what is corporate capitalism and communal forces. The point is, Karan, an institution like my St. Xavier's College should be like Caesar's wife, above suspicion. Please don't say anything which gives a perception to the people that the college or the principal is dabbling in politics. And perceptions do matter. And I'm afraid it's a very sad error of judgment on the part of Father Mascarenas, whom I know and whom I like very much, but I think he's crossed the line.
Ranjit Singh Surjewala, let me give you another example why people believe that far from being objective, balanced and neutral, Father Fraser is being terribly selective and perhaps even withholding from his students things about the BJP that should have been communicated to them. For instance, he's completely overlooked the fact that this BJP manifesto goes out of its way in almost exceptional terms to make commitments to the minorities and to Indian Muslims in particular. This manifesto says that unity in diversity is the hallmark of India, that the party commits itself to that principle, and then the BJP manifesto adds, the BJP believes that in India's unity in diversity lies India's biggest strength. The BJP is thus committed to the preservation of the rich culture and heritage of India's minorities. Now, if he's being fair, he should have communicated this to his students, but he's not only not communicated it, he's actually taken a line that suggests he's not even aware of this. That's why people feel he's not balanced.
Mr. Thapar, let me make two short points on that. Firstly, when Bharatiya Janata Party opposes to the letter, I think they are attacking really the freedom of expression of any individual, more so of a teacher, as professor of developmental politics, to point out certain indices. Number two, what has Father Fraser said? May I just summarize your entire debate? All that he says, that Gujarat model is completely lopsided vis-a-vis development of human indices. And may I just read to you two lines, not from Dr. Fraser's letter, but from Gujarat's own socio-economic survey report of 2012-13, which repeats.
You see, I'll tell you why I'm stopping you. Because if Father Fraser, I'll tell you why I'm stopping you. Because if Father Fraser was being fair, he would have presented the opposite viewpoint to his own, i.e., how the Gujarat government views the Gujarat model, so that his students could choose between two contrasting, clashing viewpoints. He hasn't done that. He's presented his viewpoint. He's kept completely silent about the opposite. Thus, he's giving a one-sided attitude and response to critical issues, and he's trying to condition his students. That's the reason why he's not being a professor, he's being an ideologue.
May I respectfully say that, Mr. Thapar, what Dr. Fraser has said is something that Gujarat government in its latest socio-economic survey admitted. That's why I just want to read two lines with your permission. There's the socio-economic survey for 2012-13 says, and I quote, the improvement in the human development scenario in the state is, however, not commensurate with the economic progress that the state has witnessed since 2000-2001, that is since Mr. Modi took over. The dividends of the rapid economic progress are yet to be translated into improvement.
I'm stopping you, Mr. Surjewala, because I don't think you can add sentences that Father Fraser hasn't himself mentioned or even thought of as justification to try and suggest that he's in some way balanced. That would be taking the argument well beyond what he's done, and that's not fair. Let me bring in Siddharth Singh, and let me put this to you. You're very angry with what Father Fraser's done, and certainly Professor Gupta believes that you have every right to be. But what about another point? What Father Fraser has done is to present a personal viewpoint. It may be one-sided, but if he had done it without putting it on the official website, if he'd done it by his private email, and therefore as an individual and not a principal, would that have been acceptable to you?
Well, Karan, if Father Fraser had sent or expressed on a platform which was not addressing the students 2 days before the elections, and as an individual he has all the right to do it, but as a principal, signing off as a principal and then sending it to the students with his opinion is objectionable, and we consider that to be improper.
Okay.
At the same time, I think the principal should have been careful. If he had given any human development index, on the other side he could have also given that there are two opinions, and the second opinion is such and such. And what Mr. Surjewala is saying, I would rather go a step ahead. There is a CAG report of 2012-2013 of the Government of India. Add to that where it says the...
Right. All of that should have been or could have been there, and if it had, it would have been better balanced. I want to take another example from Father Fraser's letter. It's not one that the press so far has picked upon, but to my mind it's a very telling example of how he's crossed that critical divide between education and politics. He says that he commends the Rozgar Yojana and the Food Security Act because, and I'm quoting, our best scientists like Amartya Sen and Jean Drèze have supported them. But he doesn't mention that equally eminent Indian scientists like Jagdish Bhagwati and Arvind Panagriya have taken a very different view. Now, if you're really opening the eyes of students so that they can make a proper choice, is it not incumbent on him to also make those students aware of Jagdish Bhagwati and Panagriya?
No, obviously, I mean, that stands to reason. In fact, I don't think that he said all of this 2 days before the election is really a matter of concern. He shouldn't have done this at all, even if it were 3 years before the election. This is not a professor's job, as I mentioned to you earlier. And by the way, when this is something that both the BJP and the Congress should now take note of, because when the Baroda School of Fine Arts was attacked, and the dean was sacked by the BJP activists there, I didn't see many voices come up from those quarters supporting academic freedom.
Now suppose a BJP government in the future chooses to sack Father Fraser for what he's done.
Yeah, it could happen.
And Father Fraser has made himself vulnerable.
Which is why I said that Father Fraser has made himself vulnerable, the institution vulnerable, and also undermined the status of an intellectual.
Let me give you one more last example, Randeep Singh Surjewala, where Father Fraser has been less than honest, less than full in briefing his students. Once again, he's been, I would say, deliberately one-sided. He says that people like Aruna Roy and Shailesh Gandhi have worked with the government, and I'm quoting him, to initiate and sustain the right to information, and he's very pleased with that. But he's completely overlooked the fact that 2 years ago, for a period that lasted for over 18 months, your government actually tried to weaken and dilute the act by removing the PMO from within its ambit and from removing file notings. And Aruna Roy publicly had to fight against that government to ensure that Dr. Manmohan Singh didn't get his way. But all of that is missing from this letter. And by withholding that information, not only is he leaving his students half informed, but once again, he's one-sided in what he tells them. Should professors really be one-sided in what they teach in such a blatant way?
Mr. Thapar, the point here is very simple. An answer to what you ask is it my job as a teacher, and I ask myself that question, to only teach the letter of the syllabi, or to give them a perspective on the larger philosophy of life as I perceive to be correct, and I'm entitled to be wrong, just like a student is entitled to disagree with me. What Dr. Fraser has done has given his true, honest, academic viewpoint, and philosophical viewpoint.
I'm not sure if it's an academic viewpoint. It may be true and honest. I doubt if it's academic. That's the question. I want to bring in Professor Gupta because you are a professor. Is it acceptable for professors to do what Mr. Surjewala is suggesting, give their own personal, true and honest viewpoint? I'm deliberately saying it's not academic because an academic viewpoint should consider the opposite side, which this one hasn't. But is it acceptable to give your own personal viewpoint because you're giving guidance? We've gone right back to the first point, but he's justifying everything on those grounds, so I'm putting it to you again.
See, those who give their personal viewpoint in order to direct people are ideologues. They're not intellectuals in university setup. And I've been a university professor for many years, and I can tell you this, that never in my classrooms or any lectures anywhere did I ever advocate any one point of view, whatever my personal preferences were.
I want to stop you.
And this is not only me, all the professors that I know.
I want to stop you, and I want to put one other thing to you in the limited time. The father keeps saying in his justification that he hasn't named any party, he hasn't named any individual. But given the way the letter's written, and given the loaded nature of the argument he puts across, did he need to? Isn't it quite obvious?
I think he shouldn't have made that defense, because that only points to the fact that he's trying to be, very devious in his presentation, which he is not as a person. I know him quite well, and therefore I'm very, very disappointed.
What he's like as a person is another matter. We can judge him by what he's written and done. Siddharth Nath Singh, your party has said that you're going to take this matter up with the Election Commission, and you've actually done that today. How much further do you plan to pursue this matter? And I'm going to ask you bluntly, if Mr. Modi forms the next government at the centre, as the polls increasingly suggest he might, would you then move to have Father Fraser replaced?
What would ask you the fine arts?
I don't think that's the right thing to do. We can't be vindictive, but yes, there is a law, and as per the law, the Election Commission should take a note and take the appropriate actions. So, under the law, whatever needs to be done, should be done, because in our opinion, it can leave a very bad precedence. Imagine what may happen if deans of IITs, IIMs, AIMS and other institutions, they start expressing similarly to the students their opinion and direct them how they should be supporting a political party. So therefore, it's a bad precedence, and Election Commission should put it right so that in future it doesn't happen.
But the important thing you said was right at the beginning of that answer. You won't be vindictive, and you don't believe it's right that any government you may form in the future should seek to replace Father Fraser. Many will be both happy and, let me be honest and add, also surprised to hear it. It's certainly a welcome statement. My thanks to all four of you for joining me. My thanks also to Soli Sorabji, who unfortunately had to step away.